Hello, algebra students. Let's run through your 1.2 quiz today. Now, before we get started looking at answers, there's a couple things in the directions that I want to make sure to highlight and point out. So it says for each of the following, we were looking to define a variable, and then the next piece we want to write an equation or inequality, depending on the scenario, and then of course the solving part. So those three key pieces are what we're looking for in every problem. All right, so let's take a look at example one, and notice right off the bat, I've defined a variable for x. Now, how do I know what x means? And I'm going to look at the very end. It's asking how many products does he need to sell? Okay, and we're talking about Chip trying to earn a certain amount of money based on the products he's selling. So now that we have a variable, let's talk about our equation. And in the beginning, it says Chip earns a base salary of $500. So we're going to start our equation off with 500. And then in addition to that salary, he earns $90 per product. So we're adding on 90 times X. And his goal is to earn 5,000. So notice I've set that equal to 5,000. All right, now solving, we're going to get an answer of x equals 50. Since it is an equation and our answer is 50, we don't need to do any kind of rounding. We'll save those for inequalities. So we just want to make sure that we answer the final question. So don't leave it x equals 50. Say something about Chip needing to sell 50 products to reach his goal. And there's your work and answers for number one. Now, example two is talking about Sarah trying to grow out her hair. And at the very end of the problem, it says determine the minimum number of months it will take Sarah's hair to grow. So I started out with X being number of months here. And then I started looking at the other numbers, like our starting point that her hair's 40 centimeters long. And then in addition to that, it's growing 1.5 centimeters per month. So I added on 1.5x. Now notice it says she wants her hair to grow so that it is at least 47 centimeters long. And that word at least means inequality. So I'm going to go with the greater than or equal. So at least means like the very minimum, if not bigger or more than that. So we want that 40 plus 1.5x to be bigger or exactly equal to the 47. Okay, so make sure you have that inequality with the correct inequality sign. And then our answer would be x is greater than or equal to 4.6. Now, because we do have a decimal with our inequality, and remember x is the number of months, and we're not going to say just 4.6 months, we're going to take a look at that sign, that greater than or equal sign, to give us the direction to round up, because again, the greater than. So we want a bigger number. So the next whole number bigger than 4.6 would be 5. So notice I answered the question. How long will it take Sarah? It's going to take her 5 months to grow out her hair to reach that goal. All right, question 3 is talking about renting a canoe, and it says how many hours can you afford to rent that canoe? So I'm going to start with x being number of hours. Okay, so we're going to get us started with defining a variable. I hope you did that as well. And when we go to our inequality, it looks like we are renting canoes for $20. So I'm starting off with that $20 fee. And then plus, so I'm going to add on, it says $35 per hour. So that's a 35 times X. Now it says you don't want to spend more than. So again, keyword do not want to spend more than. So we don't want to go over. So that's why I chose this less than or equal sign. And then our total amount obviously is this 150. So take a look at that inequality. I hope you chose the less than or equal sign as well. And then when we solve, we get this x is less than or equal to 3.7. So knowing that the X is number of hours and we are renting per hour, so I can't just say 3.7 hours, I need to take a look at that sign since it's less than or equal. So we're talking about being smaller than 3.7. I'm going to have to round down and notice my final answer. We're renting the canoe for 3 hours based on our budget here. Okay, so make sure that you answered the question using some words, and then make sure your answer is 3 hours. We don't want to leave it at the 3.7, so we need to go down to this whole number. So those first three problems are pretty straightforward. Those would be the three problems that I would use to help assess whether you are in the beginning, developing, or proficient range with those with our writing equation skills. Now we will talk about like a level 4, that mastery, in just a moment, but let's focus on the 1, 2, and 3 and thinking about what you wrote down on your first three problems versus what the video was showing you. So for the proficient, so I'm going to start with this level 3 right here. So we're looking to demonstrate with proficient skill, understanding, and the keyword consistent ways. So did you consistently define the variable correctly? Did you consistently write the equation or inequality correctly? And then did you consistently, so out of all three problems, solve the problem correctly, answer the problem correctly, even using the rounding correctly when needed. Okay, so that would be that proficient category. Now, developing here does have a lot of the same wording and you're demonstrating the standard, but the difference is it's a partial understanding. So this might mean that maybe you weren't super consistent throughout all three problems. Like maybe you got the first one right, but maybe there were some hiccups in numbers 2 and 3, or maybe you correctly identified the variable each time, but maybe you were incorrect on setting up the equation or inequality each time. So you had some good things going on for sure. You did some good solving maybe, but maybe there were just a couple things that aren't quite there yet. And again, that's an okay place to be. And then beginning or a 1 would be basic or very limited. So out of the items that I talked about in 1, 2, and 3, like developing or defining the variable, maybe you didn't have that. Or writing the equation and inequality, maybe you didn't have that. So very limited, like you were missing several key pieces and maybe only had like one thing going on that was correct. Okay, so think about those three problems right now and kind of see if you can put yourself in that either 1, 2, or 3 category based on your answers for the first three problems. And then looking at those keywords. Is it limited? Like we said for the beginning, was it partial? So had some things, missing some things, or were you consistent, rock solid, spot on with those first three? So let's talk about this level 4 or this mastery column right here. So in the wording, we're looking at demonstrating with advanced skill, broad understanding, and the biggest thing we're looking for that unique and challenging ways. So the unique and challenging way is going to be question 4. Okay, so if you were, for example, in that proficient category right here with the first three problems, and you're like, yes, I'm getting it, I'm good to go, we're going to look at your fourth question, kind of that level 4, to help differentiate and see, are you at a 3 proficient or are you able to make the jump into that higher advanced kind of level 4 question? And the biggest thing, it is kind of that unique and challenging way. So we want to have the basics down on the first three questions, and then we'll look at question 4 to see if we can make that jump into the mastery category. So here in our fourth question, they're asking about possible values for Dan's number. So we want to start out and still define that variable. just like we did in the first three problems. Now, because it's a level four, kind of that unique and challenging way, notice it is a compound inequality. So you can write your compound inequality one of two ways, and that's why I have option one or option two. Okay, so option one, our compound inequality is written together. Option two, it's split apart with that keyword and, separating the two pieces. Okay, so let's run through. It doesn't matter if you used option one or two, but let's kind of just talk about the key pieces. So the sum of 8 and a number. So notice I have 8 plus my x, my number, and it has to be more than 11. So that keyword more than tells me it's got to be bigger than 11. Okay, so that's where I'm getting that first inequality. And the second inequality, I'm still going to use that 8 and a number, but notice it says less than 25. So I'm going to use the less than symbol, and then in the word problem it says 25. So in inequality, I use the less than symbol and 25. So when I solve each one, I'm going to get this x is greater than 3, and I'm also going to get x is less than 17. So because it's an and, we're looking for that overlap. So we only want to include numbers bigger than 3 and smaller than 17. So what that tells me is the number Dan is thinking of is in the middle somewhere between 3 and 17. So I actually want to answer that question. Don't just leave it as x greater than 3 and x less than 17. Actually answer the question here. Say something about, oh, the number Dan's thinking of has to fall between 3 and 17. Okay, so actually answer that final, that question there. Tell us, what does the x mean for your answer? So if you got that, that's that level four, kind of that mastery, that unique and challenging ways. Nice job. And even if you didn't get that level four, but maybe you were close or you had some pieces of that, again, you should feel really proud of yourself. That was definitely a tough one. Okay, but we are looking for that compound inequality to get that that level four score on the rubric.